Thank you, Mel. 1 second, my mouse is being crazy on me. There we go. Okay, so just a quick update from AEE. I won't take up too much of your time, but this is our first chapter webinar since for the new year. So we were kind of doing these monthly for the last 2 years, and we noticed our attendance dropped just a little bit, but it's just because you are all so busy and you all have so many other meetings. So we're taking them quarterly this year in hopes to provide a little bit more time during this meeting for questions and things like that, and then hopefully to provide more relevant topics. So first and foremost, it is our 45th anniversary this year, AEE's, I shouldn't say our. We are celebrating all year long. We have a membership promotion going on that offers a 45% discount. I'm just gonna mute everyone real quick. And some other fun membership promotions. So if you haven't, if you're not getting our emails, send me a message so I can make sure you're subscribed. And then we're kicking off our 45th anniversary, I would say big time, at our World Energy Conference in Atlanta, which is September 21st through the 23rd. So a couple other things. We have a chapter resources page that is a SharePoint site, and we've invited, I think, chapter presidents to access this. So it's kind of an invite only. Once you've been invited, you can see everything. And we have anything from our chapter speakers, referral list, to chapter logos, Zoom account information, pre-canned PowerPoint presentations, certificate templates, a ton of resources there. So if you don't have access to that, send me an email and I'll get you hooked up there. Zoom accounts, Zoom found out what we were doing, let's just say, and they do not like us sharing accounts. So we've had a transition away from our shared Zoom accounts to specific chapter accounts. So if you need a chapter account and you don't have one yet, also just send me an email. I think at this point, everyone who needs one is set up at this point in the year. But just keep that in mind. And then just a couple reminders. We have a few student chapters on. Their award nominations are due May 15th. So a little over a month, a little less than a month for those. And then our regular chapters, our established chapters, are due June 3rd. And we want to get as many award nominations as we can. So even if it's the smallest thing you did, please submit your nomination anyway. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to see what you've been up to. I think last is just an update on our conferences. AE West is coming up in Seattle. It is a live event. We will offer a virtual component. It's really just the opening session and the Seawell breakfast, and then our local chapter luncheon, but we won't issue CEUs for that. It's just a way for our members to kind of stay engaged and see what's going on. And then World, like I said, is in Atlanta in September, also in person. So hope to see you guys at one of those events. And again, if you have questions, you can ask at the end or send me an email if you want to do that as well.
Of course.
Bob, you're muted.
Thank you. Got to get the mute button undone. Thank you, Michelle, for that good update. And now we'll move over to Devetta Thatcher, who will present her information to us today. Thank you, Devetta.
Thank you, Bob. Welcome, everyone, especially welcome to the presidents of our international chapters. It's always exciting to have such great representation here on a call. I came today to talk about the success that the New York chapter, the New York City regional chapter, has had in this time of COVID. And when I met with my board this week, we talked about the process that we go through in order to plan our programs and how that is really the most important thing for us. So I want to give you a sense for what that process is. We are starting it right now. I will be putting out a a survey with a questionnaire in it to our membership. We've got about 2,500 people on our email distribution list. Those are people who have attended at some point over the past, I'll say, 5 years. That's, we update it, but we never lose an email. We'll put it that way. So I will put out this survey and questionnaire and ask, one of the things we're doing is asking, so do you want to come back in person? Because since May of 2020, we have been virtual, strictly virtual. So we're going to ask our membership, are you ready to come back in person? And then we're going to tell them that in July, we do our annual program planning. And we have a program year that runs from September through the following June. And in July, the board members, we all get together and we go through the suggestions that have come in, and we bring our own suggestions. But the suggestions that come in from our membership through this survey are critical, because then our membership feels as if they have a voice in what they're going to be attending in the fall. So I think that's a critical part, is to ask our membership what they want to hear about. Once we've collected their input, we bring all of our ideas together. We haven't done it the past 2 years because it's had to be virtual, but we usually go into a large conference room, put up sticky papers all along the walls, and it's horse trading in terms of, we all throw up the ideas, then we cluster them together, and then we'll refine it, and then we'll come up with 8 specific sessions that we're going to have. So that's how we plan our program year. Every month when we have our board meeting, we have the upcoming meetings. First thing we talk about is the upcoming meetings. And we have 2 board members step forward to be responsible for each of those 8 chapter meetings. And those 2 board members work together to plan the speakers, to fill out the paperwork for the CEUs, to collect PowerPoints, to get the meetings set. But we also, during the board meeting, have an open discussion of, okay, we just had a session on batteries. We had 288 people registered. And I think the participants maxed out at about 155. So, I'm thrilled by that. I'm really thrilled by that. That's an active and engaged membership. So, we say, okay, batteries, well, who do you know? And what's the latest going on? We go back and forth. And that's really how our programs get planned with our speakers. One other thing we do, and we're finally getting back to it this year, is in June, we have an annual gala, which is a big dinner, sit-down dinner. And we present our chapter awards for that year. So we're very excited to be doing that again in June. And we look for a high-profile keynote speaker. And we usually can get president of NYSERDA or key players in the New York market to do that. So during our sessions, we do announcements, we do our program. We also administer a quiz for anyone who wants to get CEUs. And I know that's a big draw for people. If they want to get their PDH hours, or if they want to have that certificate to be able to count towards their various credentials. So one thing we just started doing this month is co-promoting with New England. The New England chapter, actually, their president reached out to us and said, we've got this really great program on fusion next month. Would you send that out to your membership? And I had just registered for their program, so it was perfect timing. And we agreed that when we've got a big program coming up, we'll send it to each other and then share that through membership lists across from New York to New England. So thus far, it has been working very well. We always have more than 100 people on a Zoom meeting. And frankly, with all the Zoom meetings, bless them, I don't know how people muster the energy to do so many of them, but I'm grateful that they do. So again, New York chapter, and thank you. I guess I'll pass it on to Andrew.
Excellent. Thanks, Devetta. I'm just going to share. I have some slides I'm going to share here. So we're just going to get that set up. Excellent. So once again, I'm Andrew Penner. I'm the president of the Canada East chapter. So I'm one of those internationals, although I feel kind of like a domestic because Canada and the United States is so close and we're so similar. But before I started talking, I wanted to give you guys a bit of a context of what our chapter looks like in terms of geography, because it's quite vast and there's some historical reasons for that. But I've kind of shaded on the screen, the land area that our chapter covers. Of course, most of the people in Canada live, within a 60 or 70 or 100 miles of the border. So really there's kind of more of a population band along the bottom, but we cover 6 Canadian provinces where we have people in 6 Canadian provinces. There's 2.5 time zones as part of our chapter, which is pretty interesting. There's 2 official languages, which is quite a challenge, especially if you're talking about people that only speak one of them. And of course, there's more than 10 population centers within our territory. So that gives you a bit of context about what the Canada East chapter is up against. So when you talk about meeting fatigue, I think like the biggest thing, and Devetta touched on this a little bit, is you got to be relevant, and I think that's probably like the biggest thing we struggle with, or we focus on when we're planning our program of events and topics is what is relevant to the people. And when you have a large chapter that covers not a huge chapter, but a large geographical area with a lot of diverse kind of economic zones, finding that relevant point is always a challenge, and that's what we're always striving to do. But to me, if you have an irrelevant topic, you're going to have no attendance or very little attendance. So focus on relevance, and it kind of goes without saying, but sometimes gets lost in the mix. And it's not always what I want or what the board wants. It's what the people want, and I think that's the key. So we have a bit of a meeting strategy, like the New York chapter, where we've been 100% virtual since the pandemic started. In fact, I can still remember back in 2020, we were holding our annual regional conference, and it was just before everything stopped. And we were sitting in the room and we were having a great conversation with a whole bunch of people, and literally the next week the world ended. Right, everything paused, and I'll be quite honest. Our chapter took a bit of time to pivot, but once we did figure out what the recipe for us was, things started rolling. So our strategy has been this: we want to have a consistent brand and schedule. So we want to be very regular. Before COVID, we sometimes struggled to have regularly scheduled meetings. Our board really planned, unlike the New York chapter, which is very strategic. Our board kind of planned event to event. We were a young chapter. We were just kind of figuring out what it was to be, part of the AE family, and we literally worked together to plan everything. It was very tiring. So with the onset of COVID, we actually saw things in a different way. We went to Zoom webinar, and we have a consistent brand and a consistent schedule. We gave free access to all of these things. So we used to charge people to come to our breakfasts, of course, to recover the costs of the food and the venue. But these webinars are free. Because they're webinars, they attract people from all over. We have had people from Vancouver. We've had people from the States. We've had people internationally attend our webinars. We have topic variety, which is really important. And of course, we offer PDH credits as well, and those are for chapter members. So that is the one chapter membership benefit that we make sure we continue to attach to our webinars. We don't stop anybody from coming, but we just don't issue the PDH hours if you're not a chapter member. The other thing we do to make sure we get the word out, and we've touched on this a few times already today, is registrations. You got to be able to convert, but you have to grab those people first. So we try to be extremely consistent across whatever communication platforms that we use to draw our people out. So we use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is our primary social media platform, and it's used quite a lot. So I took that snapshot. The middle image is from a webinar we're actually holding tomorrow, which is a net zero community housing retrofit case study. And you can see that over the last year and a half, our followers on LinkedIn have grown. We're over 780 now, which is quite remarkable for a relatively small chapter. But we use LinkedIn a lot. Of course, we also still do e-blasts. So we use our MailChimp list to blast to our contact list, which isn't quite as deep as Devetta's is, but we think it's still pretty good. And then, of course, we also leverage our website. So everything is across all platforms, and it's as consistent as we can make it. And there's links to register in each of these places, which we think is really important as well. Of course, it doesn't stop there. So, once we do hold the event, and we're converting about 50%, similar to what Michelle said earlier. We'll gather on an average webinar. We'll gather around 60 to 70 registrants, and around 30 to 35 turnout. But then what we ensure we do is we record the event, and it gets posted in a couple of places. So we have a YouTube channel. We post the recorded webinar on the YouTube channel. We also include a link on our website to download the slide deck with the permission of our speakers. So if you've missed it, you haven't missed it entirely. And I'm guilty of it too. I mean, we've all been kind of blessed with all these opportunities to watch and listen to all sorts of things across the entire globe. And frankly, we can't always get to it, but I register with the intent of getting the video later on and watching it. And I think that's really important, because it's just because they didn't show up on the day doesn't mean they're not interested or you can't reach them. So we try to make it as easy as possible. So we post it on our website with a link to our YouTube channel. And then the other thing we do is we gather one of our board members. We ask to do a bit of a synopsis, and we write up a bit of a synopsis of what went on the webinar, and then we post that on our website's blog. So it's kind of a full circle strategy where we're trying to continue to connect to people, and we feel like if we can continue to give them reasons to come back to the website and reasons to come back to our LinkedIn location, then we're all that much better at communicating the key messages for energy efficiency, decarbonization, and resilience that we're trying to do as an organization. So that's it in a nutshell. That's how we keep our fatigue down. We are looking forward to transitioning to in-person and some hybridized eventing, but for now, we've been stuck with webinar, but I'll tell you, webinar has helped us. It's probably created a better chapter for it. So that's it.
Okay, Andrew, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Great presentation. Now we'll move over to Mel Claus from AEE. Mel, take it away.
Thanks, Bob. I'm happy to be here seeing you all today. Even if your video is not on, I see your name, so it's great to see you all. For me, I just want to come and speak from a perspective more on the marketing side of webinars and maybe how you can differentiate yourself. Like Andrew and Devetta talked about, I think one of the biggest things is to ask your members, what are you looking for? Is that educational content? Is that networking opportunities? Is that maybe like leadership opportunities or leadership like seminars where they can see like growth in their actual skills? And then you build your events based on that feedback. Think of things like trivia, game night. We've seen our C-Wheel division test out speed networking, and that can be virtual and in person. I mean, there are many ways to tie in both virtual and in-person events together. It could be golf tournaments, meeting with your local universities to increase the young members that are in your chapter. Maybe offer mentoring or career shadowing, like a day where they can shadow you and what you do. And then I also want you guys to think about how you can get creative with your meeting names. I know it's always the classic thing to see, oh, I'm hosting a webinar, here's our topic, it's technical, but I mean, you can make it fun. Think of like lunch and learn. You can say like coffee and credits if it's a morning event, or like drinks and credits, trivia with your chapter, things like that. We've seen some student chapters actually utilize an app called Kahoot, where they'll make questions before the meeting starts, maybe somewhere between like 5 or 7 questions. And then at the end of the chapter meeting, they'll have everyone log in. There's no app required. All you need is your phone. So it doesn't matter where you are, if you're in person or not, and you can answer those questions, and then they hand out prizes based on that. So you could charge like a $5 admission fee, and then you can give someone, say like a $25 gift card at the end of the meeting for their participation in that meeting. But my best advice would be think outside of the box, Ask your members for feedback. And then after you actually trial what your members are asking for, make sure you reevaluate how that's actually working for your chapter meetings and how that affects your chapter attendance. But that's all for me.
Okay, Mel, thank you very much. Thank you for that great information. I picked up, I'm asked if anyone has any questions, put them on the chat box and send them in. I picked up a few notes from listening to these different ideas. And although we had 3 different speakers, it was amazing how similar some of the ideas and the focus was. I don't know if you guys picked up on that or not. But one of the notes that I took is ask, what do people want to hear and what are people looking for? I mean, that's the very essence of having a positive program, I believe. And not only that, but have some feedback after the program so you can see if you figured it out or not correctly. The other things was, the other point I picked up was PDHs being offered. That's good. And along with that, put some variety in there. The game that Mel talked about, I thought was pretty interesting. I'd never heard of that, but I think that's a great idea. Might even try it in our chapter down in Huntsville. We have to see about that. But also downloading these speakers' presentation, of course, with their permission. Key point there is a very positive thing to do too, in case somebody isn't able to meet that, attend the chapter meeting, they can at least get the presentation. We do that with this this meeting. This webinar is being recorded, so people can download it and see it even if they don't get it. Have we got any questions that have come in, Michelle, while I was talking there?
Yeah, we do have one. It's how do you advise differentiating AEE meetings from ASHRAE or IFMA meetings? So for those of you who don't know, ASHRAE and IFMA are basically competing associations like us, membership association in the energy industry. So they're competing with members and attendance from those meetings. So do you have any recommendations or on how to make AEE's meetings kind of stand out, I guess?
Davetta, let me ask you to tackle that question. I'm just throwing it out. What are your thoughts?
I already put it in the chat. One of the things that we have done in New York is we have joined forces with ASHRAE and had joint meetings. And they typically get they typically do their meetings as a dinner meeting, $50 a plate. And we have never done that. We charge $20 a meeting, and then we serve sandwiches or pizza or something like that. But we found that joining forces with ASHRAE really helped to distinguish us from them in some way. Once you put us all together, then you really had a self-identity being in that room amongst all of the energy professionals. So that would be my suggestion.
Good
And
input.
Jeff Scott says the same thing. So.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was looking at those. Andrew, anything up in Canada about that? What do you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and it's a challenge that I think we all share probably, no matter where our chapter resides. There's always going to be competing interests for space and time. You know, one of the things that we always said when we started our chapter was we were trying to give people a venue where they could focus on topics related to energy. You know, and I remember as a practitioner that when before there was a chapter in Ottawa, I'd have to go to 3 or 4 different groups events to get, you know, my fill of the information I was looking for. So one of the things that we've done is we've positioned ourselves for those people who are interested in energy topics to come to kind of a one-stop. We have a bit of a different challenge, you know, in our region anyways, is that the ASHRAE chapter in particular is extremely well established, and it's been there for a very long time. And in fact, one of the recent presidents of ASHRAE, the association, or the association, came from Ottawa. So it's, you know, we tried a little bit to interact with them, and we struck out, unfortunately. But I do kind of echo the shared event strategy. I know that in the Atlantic Canadian provinces, where our chapter also touches. There's a lot of sharing that happens amongst organizations, especially for the large gala events, and it's certainly something that we are looking to kind of expand and join into. As a young chapter, we're only 5 years old, so we're not quite there yet, but that is our strategy as well.
Okay, thank you. Mel, anything to add there?
I guess the biggest thing I would say is make sure that you're actually speaking to what the members are looking for, kind of what Andrew and Devetta referenced. You have to see like what maybe ASHRAE or some of these other associations are doing, and then what people are looking for from you, because they may be going to ASHRAE meetings for a different reason. So I think the best way to figure out what that is to straight up ask for feedback, survey your members, whoever comes to the meetings, see what they're looking for, and then take it from there.
Okay.
And ASHRAE is much more broad than just energy. So we kind of keep the focus on the things that are very, very energy specific, the decarbonization efforts, battery storage, as I said, whereas ASHRAE HVAC has got a lot of different pockets for it.
Okay, good point. We had another question come in, Michelle. I believe it says, let's see, where was that?
Yeah, we have one that says, how can some of the our international chapters get presenters who are willing to make presentations during chapter meetings? So I can try to answer that from AEE perspective, and then I'll just to see how it's maybe different from Andrew or Devetta or Mel if they have a recommendation. We do have a chapter speakers list, so we continuously are adding to that, and we ask people, who you are, your company, what topics you can present on, and then whether you are willing to speak live or virtually, if you will travel, if you won't travel. So it's got a lot of information in there, and then really it's up to you, your chapter, to reach out and I get to know these people, tell them where you're from, what time your meetings are. I would say most of them are more than willing to present, whether it's a US or international chapter meeting. So I would recommend starting there.
Michelle, I think that's an excellent place to start, and I think that's a pretty good summary of what's available. Also added to that, members within your chapter are connected in all kinds of different ways in their business lines, and they know folks who can bring in very good topics, and that's another good source of information. And our chapter there in Huntsville, we also use that process to get folks.
May I add one other? It's kind of the steal from the best approach. Go onto other chapters' websites and look at what their meetings have been and who they've had as speakers. And if it's pertinent to your group, reach out to them because they already have a presentation ready.
Absolutely. And you, Devetta, you made me think of one more. It's almost the same as yours. If you look at the AEE meetings, the East, West, or the AEE world, and look at the topics that are presented, there's a great list of topics there. And guess what? Each topic has a speaker, and you can get a hold of that speaker, similar to what you're saying, Devetta. Mm-hmm. And you can find topics that way. So there's a lot of ways to find speakers and presentations. But as we said earlier, one of our speakers said this morning or today, do not get hung up on just having a speaker at a meeting. Do different things. Go to places. Have a plant tour or something like that. There are things you can do other than having speakers. Speakers are great, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there are other things you can do too. I think Mel mentioned some varieties, and variety is good, very good. Michelle, have we got anything else that we need to address before we close this morning?
Yeah, two that I would want I think Andrew and Devetta's feedback on to it. The question is, does AEE provide survey tools to its chapters? And the answer is no, but we can give you recommendations of some free survey tools online. Surveymonkey is free up to a certain number. And then Mel, you're gonna have to tell me the other one that we use.
I think we use Cognitoforms.
Yeah, so we could come up with a list, but I am curious what Andrew and Devetta use to survey their members.
Yeah, we've used Surveymonkey as well, Michelle, and you're right. It is free. I think up to 10 questions is free, so it's a great way to get feedback. It's interesting. Just not unlike meeting registrations, you end up putting the survey out to a few hundred people, and depending on their engagement and when it hits their email box, you may or may not turn out 20 or 30 responses. So it's to me, I find it a bit of a shot in the dark, unfortunately. But we also tried using our LinkedIn. There's some tools on LinkedIn to do surveying as well. And a couple of months ago, we put a survey out to see whether or not the people were prepared to come back to in-person eventing. And it was just before one of our myriad of waves, I guess, and the response was quite positive. But anyway, there's tools on LinkedIn that you can use, and the nice thing about using those tools is it's tied right into whatever presence you have there as well, which is, I think, important.
I have nothing to add, but I am going to put my email address into the chat because I know that Mohammed had his hand up and there might be other questions. So if you have questions, feel free to email me.
Great. Michelle, have I missed anything?
I think that there were some questions from Mohammed. He was asking if he could share his chapter's plan for the year. And then what kind of value proposition to increase their membership base, what kind of value proposition can they offer to their members? So I told him we could connect offline, but if you want to answer that in a minute or two, I think we have time for that as well.
Yeah, I think we're down to about 1 or 2 minutes before we have to end the program. Michelle, it's up to you if you can connect and give him that period of time.
Yeah, does one person want to maybe answer that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for the correction. Can you summarize that one more time?
Yeah, so just how can they increase their membership base? What sort of value propositions are chapters using to increase their membership base?
Oh, I got it. We heard some of that from Devetta. Andrew, I'm gonna throw that one to you. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. So we have a couple of channels for value that we're trying to drive. So the one and probably the biggest for a lot of our members is PDH hours. So again, more and more, certifications and licenses are looking for, proof that you're remaining current within your vocation. So offering that to our membership is important. And we actually have seen, the more we talk about that at our webinars, like, hey, if you want the PDH hour, you got to be a member of the chapter. If you don't want them, that's all good, well and good. But if you want them, you need to be. And we've seen an uptick in our registrations because of that messaging. But I think the other thing that helps us, drive membership is having a really engaged sponsorship stable. So we've always been very blessed in the Canada East chapter to have an extremely strong corporate sponsorship position. And what I find that helps us do is it creates some credibility for us as a chapter, but it also provides lots of opportunities for members to connect with, some of those, companies or what have you that are offering services or products within the energy efficiency world. So I think there's some value that can be driven that way as well.
Okay, Andrew, thank you. I appreciate that. This time we're going to go ahead and terminate the webinar. We appreciate everyone's participation, appreciate the questions and the attendance all around the world today. It's been very interesting. We had some great presentations, some good notes, and some good pointers to help us with our chapter meeting fatigue syndrome that sometimes creeps into most any chapters that are out there. Once again, thank you. We'll talk to you at the next one. Goodbye.
Bye.